unique in the world of iRacing. 60 plus racing adventures is the iRacing League for drivers 60 years of age or older. People certainly think about the kids and the youth when they think about iRacing, but this is an incredibly exciting league. Long running too, back for a new season of Indy Next competition, and it's live here on RaceSpotTV from Road America. David Haynes with Ron Morns and Hugo Lewis as we get ready for some incredibly exciting racing to see who will be a champion in this new season of 60 plus racing adventures. The Indy Next is back and it starts here at Road America, Ron.
Yeah, and look at the calendar that we have spanning the end of this year and the beginning of next. Of course, getting it all up and rolling here at Road America, a historic track, especially in open wheel circles. When I think of Road America, I think of IndyCar. So I think this is a match made in heaven here today. Just looking at the remaining calendar, Okayama, Mexico City, Barcelona, Watkins Glen will be broadcasting the next round of the championship at Zandvoort for round 6 on January 21st. Then rounding it off at Silverstone with the likes of Interlagos, Imola, Road Atlanta, Fuji, and Montreal between then and now. We've got a really compelling schedule. Mix of technical tracks, old school, new school, some straight line blasts as well. This is a fantastic calendar.
Absolutely. It is looking forward to coming back for Zandvoort in a couple of weeks' time. But before we get racing here at Road America, it's time to go qualifying, and drivers are just leaving the pit lane. Long outlap here at Road America, because when you think about this circuit, you think about some of the open wheel heritage. I think about cheese, and I think about the fact that this racetrack is 200 meters longer than Mount Panorama Bathurst. It is one of the long permanent road courses around the world. Certainly you compare it to some other North American tracks like Mid-Ohio or Laguna Seca or Portland, and this is a big lap. It's a long lap. Your outlap is long, your tire wear is high, and those are some interesting things to consider when we come racing here. So the drivers have not yet, any of them, come around to start a flying lap yet. On board with Mike McCormick for the moment as he goes through Canada Corner.
Yeah, and heading his way off through the top end of the circuit, which I think is probably the tightest and twistiest section of this circuit. It is giant, though. Huge circuit, many long flat out blasts, and this, of course, is one of them. The start-finish straightaway, super vital to get a good run heading out of there through the final turn. Mike McCormick about to come across the line in that number 99 car, about to get some time set on the board here in qualifying. I feel like here at Road America, even though you've got a lot of long straightaways, I feel like qualifying just has that extra sense of importance here today. So we'll have to see what these racers can do in this vital session to kick the season off on the right note.
We're looking at a sizable field as well, so in that case it would be a real struggle to come too far forward from the field from too far back if qualifying didn't quite go your way. Mike McCormick is looking for his braking zone down into turn 5. Biggest braking zone on the lap. A bit slidey there from the rear end. This is the most powerful car that 60 plus racing adventures have ever run in their open wheel formula, making the change to the Indy Next car just recently, and it is a real powerful beast, also with push to pass available in the race.
Yeah, these cars are over a decade old now. When the original, it was back when it was still called Indy Lights, back in 2015 when they brought out these brand new chassis. Of course, back at the start of the decade in 2020, they added in the Halo, the cockpit protection device, after Indy Lights' hiatus during the 2020 season. But even then, even though these regulations are a little bit older, I still think they put on some absolutely amazing racing in real life, and certainly that carries over into the sim. I gotta say, and this is honest, I have yet to purchase this car, but it's certainly on my wish list. I am definitely a bit biased as an IndyCar guy, but these cars are just so cool, and I think they put on amazing racing, and here at this track, it does feel like a match made in heaven as we see McCormick come across the line.
Yep, here come our first lap times. John Payne goes to the top. Mike McCormick slots in second. Roger Jansen is a relatively new name to 60 Plus Racing Adventures, gets a time in. Kevin Bergqvist up into 7th. Wolf Olsen then quickly takes that. So a lot of excitement around the start of a new season, a couple of new names, a couple of returning names, and a great field assembled for 2 races of Road America today. We're qualifying to set the grid for race number 1.
And as I alluded to a few moments ago, super vital to get a good run here in this qualifying session just to start the season off on a good note. So many different tracks that we're going to be running at that just trying to stay headstrong throughout this season, make sure you're always with it, can be a great benefit for these racers. So I think they're all adding in a bit of extra in points. You just want to start the season off on a good note. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but if you snap your ankle on that first step, it's not going to bode well for the rest of the journey now, will it?
No, absolutely not. Roberto Catalano, John Payne, Ragnar Wisloff as our top 3 right now. 29 drivers out on track. 25 have set qualifying times at the moment as we get into the back half of this qualifying session. There's just a tiny bit of a snap coming over the crest at Bill final corner. I'm seeing pretty long gear ratios in effect. Just towards 6th gear as he crosses the start-finish line. That should leave everyone with enough headway that if they get us stalling out and banging the rev limiter. And Payne, with that lap time, moves just a little bit closer to the top but can't displace Roberto Catalano. Pete Thomas slots into 4th. Steve O'Malley grabs 12th. Looks like Ross Addy's qualifying done as Kevin Bergqvist grabs 6th.
Yeah, and looking at the intervals between these drivers in this qualifying session, it may seem like the field is really spread out, but considering that this is probably the longest track that we'll be racing at all season long, having the top 5 covered by less than 4.5 tenths really shows you how competitive this field is. If we'll boil it down even more, the top 4 are covered by just a tick over a quarter of a second. Let's see if Ragnar Wisloff can change that a little bit. He improves to 5th. He's now within 4 tenths of that pole time by Roberto Catalano, but still very, very close, razor-thin margins in this qualifying session. I think that front row really exemplifies that. The fact your top 2 qualifiers are covered by less than a tenth of a second on a nearly 4-mile-long racetrack. Following Greg's sights as he heads his way off through the mid-sector right now. This is looking like an all-right lap time from him, and I gotta say, a fantastic paint scheme on that car, too. This is a trouble spot, the real test of a driver's patience, skill, and tenacity behind the wheel of all sorts of race cars. The Carousel 9 and 10. You're pretty much at terminal velocity heading your way off through there, but you gotta build the speed up even more. This is a track that really tests the bravery of all racers. Doesn't matter what kind of machinery you're in, it is always going to be a test and see whether or not you can crack open that bottle full of brave pills quickest to see whether or not you can get the max out of your race car that you can here. Seeing a good time from sights there, comes across the line and goes to the pole. That's a 151.035, my apologies. Improves to the pole by some margin as well. Saw some very tight margins between 1st and 2nd. That's the biggest we've seen thus far. 0.245 of a second between himself and Roberto Catalano. Sights setting a benchmark time. That is fantastic from him, with only about a minute and change left to go here in qualifying. To put in a time like that shows you that he has some level of confidence running around this circuit. Not sure how many other times we'll see out there on the racetrack. I think everybody has gotten their qualifying done and dusted, and if that is the case, Sights being the standout star right at the end, setting the fantastic performance. That is going to be fantastic from him. So we'll be switching our attention off into this race in a couple of moments time, but that lap time from Sights and that pole time too talked about it, the margin between himself and first and second. We were seeing such big gaps between your provisional front row before he set that time. And he barges in and say, hey, you said it was a close qualifying session. I can buck this trend. Currently dealing with some technical issues with my esteemed colleague David at the moment. So we'll keep things going, marching to the beat of the drum as we tick down the moments here in qualifying and get it all up and rocking for what is going to be a fantastic opening round of this season. I mentioned how historic this racetrack is, and we'll definitely have some time to talk about that throughout this show. For now, though, let's take a look at the starting grid, where it's going to be Greg Seitz starting from the pole. Roberto Catalano will join him on the front row. John Payne in the number 2 car will start this race, not very fittingly, in third, with Mike McCormick alongside in fourth. Ragnar Wisloff will start in fifth. Pete Thomas will start alongside in P6, rounding out row number 3. On row 4, it's going to be Barry Hills alongside Kevin Bergquist. Row number 9, rounding out your top 10 in P9, I should say, is Garrett Jorson. Alongside him will be Todd Scholl. Greg Garris will start in P11. Alongside him will be Russ Addy. Looking right behind on row number 7, it's Mike Grandy in a very nice looking Haas F1 scheme alongside Franz Joseph Stumm. It is Steve O'Malley, I should say, starting this race in P15. Next to him will be Ulf Ollison. Trevor Lawrence will start this race in 17th. Eugene Clark alongside in 18th. Peter Halstrom will start in 19th. David Floman will complete your top 20. Douglas Beasley will start this race in 21st in the number 9 car, with Pierre Benet starting alongside in 22nd. Onvid Anderson will start in 23rd, next to Bruce Poole in 24th. That's row number 12. And rounding out your field will be JC Hay alongside Tom DeSelms, with Roger Jansen and Randy Shoemake completing your 28 starters here in this race. The whole field covered by 3.9 seconds, as hopefully, fingers crossed, I've been able to bring back into the commentary booth. David, have we had you return here?
We'll see how we go. We're lining up for the short formation lap here just before Canada corner.
I think we got you 5x5, so that is a very good development indeed. Was just talking about how it was a standout performance from your pole sitter, breaking away with that big of a gap at the end. A quarter of a second between your front row compared to it being less than a tenth a few moments beforehand. That is a rather big gap. So we'll have to see if that can maybe be a sign of things to come in this race, and he'll be able to extend that gap and run off into the sunset with an opening win in the opening round of the championship, but only time will tell. For now, though, just seeing this field stationary at the current moment in the run-up down into Canada Corner, was mentioning how historic this racetrack is. Opened all the way back in 1955, and the amount of racing that has gone on here over the years, really what this track is most known for, at least in my book. But IMSA runs here year after year. NASCAR ran here for a decent period of time too, so they've got some absolutely awesome racing to look forward to as the field is lining up. David, have we got you again? Fingers crossed. I am not sure if we have my colleague David Haynes, so we'll run by the seat of our pants, as I usually like to say. It is show business, and the show must go on as we see these racers head their way through the top end of the circuit. Keeping on this turn 13 and 13A as it's marked off on the track map. Even though it's really just one turn and one turn alone. Super tricky section. You gotta run through there as bravely as you possibly can. This is a track that tests the bravery, test the skill, and test the trust of your competitors as well. So really looking forward to what we're going to be having here for 60 Plus Racing Adventures in round number 1 of this season. Our pole sitter guns it early as a green flag flies and the drivers are on their way. A commanding start from your pole sitter. He's got to try and lead him off comfortably down into turn number 1. Meanwhile, everybody else still going side by side, more or less, as they head their way all through 1 into 2 right about now. Yes, that kink in the road is marked off as turn number 2. Don't ask me why. I can't speak on American racetracks. Some of our cornering conventions are a little bit goofy, but Greg Seitz getting off to a flyer of a start. A little bit surprising that he jumped into a different line before that line and got away with it without any sort of penalty, but he still holds on to the race lead. But John Payne is right there to pound side by side racing as they head their way through the Marine Sweep into turn number 5, the first real heavy braking zone of this opening lap, and he's gonna get the race lead. John Payne in the number 2 car, now holding on to P1 P1 brake sites right behind, gonna try and find a way to bounce back and punch his way up into a top spot, as it looks like it's been a very, very clean start for most of the field. Oh, worst time for me to say that as they stack him up big time out of 5.
John Payne not hanging around when it came to getting this race start underway through the carousel. You've got big wide tyres on these Indy Next cars, a lot of downforce on them, and John Payne leads towards the kink here. Push to pass already soon to be in effect. Greg Seitz into the slipstream towards Canada Corner.
Yeah, these cars do have the benefit of having that push-to-pass system. There's not a lot of cars that really have it. You do have DRS, but in terms of a push-to-pass kind of energy system where you get an extra boost of power, I'm trying to think now. I know the Super Formula car has it. I don't believe the Super Formula Lights car does. These cars certainly do. The Indy car does as well, obviously. And it gives these drivers a bit more of an advantage to go for some moves where they usually wouldn't, which always provides a bit more spice as we take a look at that moment. Drivers going up in the air out of 5.
Yeah, monumental damage. Someone already lost their front wing down there, so it's wheel-to-wheel contact on the exit of turn 5. Causes a checkup where contact then happens a bit deeper. Ragnar Wisloff comes up into 4th. Pete Thomas is being absolutely swamped down into turn 3. So Kevin Bergqvist goes past. Russ Addy thought about it and then has to wait. Push to pass active now on lap 2 of 15. And I think the slipstream is also super powerful with the high speeds here. So we are going to see a lot of this sort of who dares to try to outbrake who at turn 1, turn 3, turn 5, and other places around the track now. John Payne just holding on to his race lead as they negotiate that turn 5 once again.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that will be a big game of chicken heading off into the braking zone, and sometimes it goes poorly, as we just see from David Plowman, an incident heading down into turn number 5. It's always a really tricky braking zone, but all the braking zones are going to be tough here. A good spot to get a move done, to be sure, but with tight turns that follow up these heavy braking zones, it can be a spot where drivers can squabble up a little bit too hard, have some fisticuffs break out. We've already seen it through 5, may see it off through 1. And certainly Canada Corner is kind of known for that, both in real life and in the sim, so I think we're definitely going to have to keep our eyes on that throughout this race, David.
Looking at a couple of replays of the race start, and that is a few drivers getting in quite hot post the hurry downs before the carousel here. So Steve O'Malley way off the track, and not the only driver out there at Canada Corner now. There's drama, that's backwards in the gravel. Mind you, rejoins here as well, as the track is shaded on both sides by some tall trees.
Well, they call it the National Park of Speed for a very good reason. Picturesque in the countryside of Wisconsin. I believe it's in Sheboygan County, Wisconsin as well. An absolutely beautiful part of the country. Trees all over you. You got some ponds around here as well. Ponds and lakes are usually a nice little spot for race fans and racers alike to visit, but that's not a place you want to visit at all. The gravel trap on the outside Canada Corner.
This is for the race lead. Greg Seitz wants it back down the inside of turn 5. He's just going to hold John Payne out wide as they've been battling. Roberto Catalano has gotten close. So top 3, very exciting battle at the moment. Ragnar Wisloff has worked his way up to that 4th place where he can see the leaders and is going to be fingers crossed for a bit more battling between them. We'll see if that transpires with Greg Seitz back in the lead. And he's bringing his group of Kevin Bergqvist, Russ Addy, Pete Thomas, and Todd Scholl along as well. That's quite wide from Greg Seitz to come back towards the late apex. I always find the longer races go on here at Road America, the dirtier it becomes way around the outside of the carousel there.
Yeah, I think heading off through the carousel later on in one of these races, even in a short race like this, is basically like walking on a tightrope. If you make one step to the left or to the right, if you miss the apex and run off into the marbles, you're gonna be in for a very rough trip off the track, through the gravel trap, and very likely into the tire bundles. It's happened in real life, certainly can happen in the sim. I do want to give a mention as well to another turn where that may be tricky. Canada Corner, already seeing some gravel on the outside there, so it'll be fascinating to see how that develops throughout this race.
beginning lap 4. Another place where the slipstream will be super strong is along the front straight here. John Payne just sits that sort of 1.5 tenths behind Greg Seitz before just easing it off and braking into turn 1. Traction very key in this car with how much horsepower they've got. And we've had some dramas at turn 1. Looks like Gerhardus Jorgensen might be towing. We'll take a look. He had his teammate Barry Hills just ahead of him in towards turn 1. He pushes just a tiny bit wide, half of the tyres on the grass. That spins him, he locks it up, but there's no saving the car from going towards the inside wall. It's just a little bit too much speed, a little bit too much aggression in towards turn 1, and race 1 for Gerhardus Jorgensen's not going the way that he will have hoped. Eyes back on the battling top 3. Seitz, your reigning champion. John Payne just keeping him close so far this race. Catalano in 3rd. A few drivers hitting their push to pass as well, coming out of the carousel, coming out of the kink, and just trying to pick up some speed along the fast straights that Road America is known for.
Yeah, I will say, touching on that moment that we saw from Jorgensen heading out of turn number 1, that's one benefit that the drivers in real life have over the ones in the sim. Recently, Road America completely redone. They're still trying to refurbish the track and make it a bit more modern day, bring it up to modern day standards for the facilities and most certainly the racetrack. They added in some asphalt runoff area on the outside turn number 1 in the recent repave that they did in real life. And although there was a pretty nasty bump coming out there when they first did the repave, there is a benefit of having that asphalt runoff area, so a quick trip off into the dirt would not cause your car to slide off as if it landed on a water slide. So unfortunate moment for him, but I'm sure we'll probably see him come back to form come time for the start of race number 2.
On board with Roberto Catalano in the bottom shot. You can see on the timing column, but also on the driver's dash, when they're hitting push to pass, big green light comes on. And Catalano's just been managing it. You start every race with 150 seconds, and for this duration of race, we've worked out that that means you actually get a fair bit to use. It would be 10 seconds per lap if you spread it evenly, but you don't always. There is such a tactical element to that in this car that we've been experiencing in 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Battling from turn 5 up towards the Corvette Bridge and the top of the hill. Mike McCormick.
And to elaborate on the point that you raised in reference to the push-to-pass game that will be played by these competitors, it's a good little look into the mental side of how these drivers try and tackle one of these races. If they burn up that bun a little bit too much early on and they have nothing left to go, you can tell those are usually the more aggressive racers that want to just attack, and then only let off the throttle when they absolutely have to and have no other choice. Then you're going to see some racers that are a bit more conservative and maybe saving it for the very end. Sometimes in real life and in the sim, you'll see racers actually finish with a little bit of push to pass left to spare. And I always find that fascinating to see how racers end up in that position where they decide to tackle their race in a way where they end up with a bit of a surplus.
Focusing again on that 4th, 5th, 6th battle. Russ Addy gets ahead of Kevin Bergqvist. You go back on board with Bergqvist as he needs plenty of steering angle to negotiate turn 3, and then he hits the push to pass just for 1 or 2 seconds. Gives you a little bit of extra punch out of the corners underneath the Sargento Cheese Bridge. We're real cheese people, but he's not quite going to be able to get that spot back. Down turn 5, you don't really want to upset the car straddling that curb, but you do want to open up and create a smooth line in towards turn 5. A bit of tyre lockup, a bit of dust being just kicked up into the morning air. Things are changing in that top 5 as well, so a gap opens up between Greg Seitz and John Payne for the lead of the race. Roberto Catalano drops back just a tiny bit as well, and now he's under pressure for a podium spot from Ragnar Wisloff, holding a tight line through the carousel. 4th gear as he exits, up into 5th, through sixth gear in the kink, and that looks just about flat out in this car. So that will really give you a powerful slipstream as you carry so much speed onto the following straight.
Yeah, and through Canada Corner, a fantastic spot to get a move done, but can be a little bit tricky to hit your marks in that braking zone. Of course, with the shadows from the trees that you brought up not too long ago, David. Tricky to find your braking marker, and also can be a little bit colder in that part of the racetrack than others. Whenever there's rain at Road America, that's usually the bit of the track that dries up the last. So that could be a spot to really pants if you want to get a move done through there. But yeah, well, I'll have to see how exactly Canada Corner develops, whether or not that will be a trouble spot, or whether or not other turns, for instance, like turn number 5, may be the real source of trouble for these racers in this race here today.
Yeah, Bennett in 16th place, just behind Trevor Lawrence and Steve O'Malley is that battle group. Bruce Poole's also going to try to attack JC Hay for 18th place down in towards turn 1, but now on a tight line into 1 where we've seen some drivers pick up some understeer. He just manages to deal with that and move up a position. There's a couple of drivers that haven't touched their push to pass yet by the looks of things at all. Pierre Bennett's one of them, but there's a few drivers that have really been using it. Roberto Catalano's used a fair bit. That's wide from Bennett, another driver that hasn't used any.
And to elaborate on what you said about Roberto Catalano being really heavy on the bun, he's once again on the push to pass as he heads his way off through the back end of the circuit. I believe he's heading his way through the kink into Canada Corner in just a couple of moments' time. But he's been really heavy on that bun, and it hasn't resulted in him closing up that gap between himself and the duo of Sights and Payne. He's just been doing that to try and fend for his life from the challenge from Ragnar Wisloff right behind. So if anybody is feeling the burn at this point of the race, I'd probably say it's Roberto Catalano. In the first portion of the race, in the first couple of laps, it looks like he was keeping the top 3 on us, but I wonder whether or not he's burnt up the tires on that. Whatever the case may be, I think he's really under pressure in that 3rd place spot and may very well lose it here soon.
And some interesting role reversal as well between 1st and 2nd, where John Payne has got more push to pass left in his back pocket, has closed up the gap to Greg Sights as well. So as you get to the halfway point of the race, who's been saving and is now going to spend, and who's been spending and now needs to save in that category? John Payne's got 30 more seconds of push to pass, and he ends up just faking a little bit for the lead of turn 5. Didn't use any there on the run towards turn 5, and then the next group of cars, you've got Pete Thomas, Russ Addy, Kevin Bergquist, Todd Scholl exiting turn 5 and heading up the hill as well. In this battle, Russ Addy's used the most and Pete Thomas has used the least.
How these racers use the push to pass is going to be vital. One thing that I would love to have if I was one of these racers is I would love to know exactly what level of push to pass all of my competitors around me had. I would love to know, like, okay, the driver right in front has no push to pass, I'm good to go. I could just use a little bit of mine and just blow his metaphorical doors off. Or even if I had a driver behind me who had a lot more push to pass than I did, I would love to know, it's like, okay, when it looks like he just buzzes by me, buzzes a tower as if it's going out of style, I will know what the deal is. As, oh, that's a big sideways snap from Pierre Benet. He's been having troubles thus far in this race, hasn't he? Not too long ago when we were following him. Yeah, another sideways snap out of that exact same turn of turn 5.
Well, a lot of power from the 2-litre turbocharged engine in this car, and on a really tight line like they're bouncing a little bit of the inside curve, probably just as you've got a bit of steering lock on but are wanting to really advance the throttle. Just picked up that little bit of wheel spin, and then it gets away from you a little bit further, but he reacted quickly and managed to save it. Here's Addy and Thomas side by side. Addy goes to the inside of one, pushes a little bit wide, so Thomas is going to try to cut underneath, but there's too many other drivers involved in this battle as well. Bergquist looks inside, looks outside, and really puts Pete Thomas in a position where he's like, I'm trying to attack Russ Addy again, but now suddenly I'm back to defending Kevin Bergquist again. And Todd Scholl sits in behind. Bergquist hits just a tiny bit of the push to pass. He's looking for the inside here versus the green machine of Pete Thomas. That looks like a good move from Bergqvist as Russ Addy also locks up an inside tyre, but stays on the road. Becomes even tougher here for Thomas as he runs up wide trying to defend.
I had a bad feeling about that. Thomas, as soon as he got one move put on him, it was like a snowball effect. He lost another and then another, was going to lose a third, and then just ran incredibly deep over the crest of the hill. That was into turn number 6. Super blind section of the racetrack as you crest your way over the hill under that Corvette bridge. Very easy to lose track of everything, unfortunately, for Pete Thomas. I think he had his cage rattled just a little bit. Unfortunately for him, he has lost touch of everybody that he was once battling with. Still holding on to his spot inside the top 10, but not nearly as high up the running order as he was a matter of about a half a lap ago.
Well, I think we're all sold on Road America as a great place to go racing, because in these Indy Next cars that have got more horsepower than cars that have been used in 60 plus in the past, cars like the Pro Mazda, Dallara F3, Super Formula Light, you're still getting really, really close racing out of the slipstreaming, out of the use of the push to pass, out of all of the challenge that this car creates. So a top 4 battle begins to form as Russ Addy, Kevin Bergqvist and Todd Scholl battle over these others. There's some other spots changing hands in other places, like Ulf Olsen versus Steve O'Malley, and some other drivers that had damage earlier in the race that are coming back up through the field. So this is going to be another one of those 15-lap races where you could produce a highlights package longer than the actual race itself. Bergqvist to the inside of Russ Addy towards turn 5, and then runs that little bit wide. So that's what this car creates. Opportunities to make mistakes, opportunities to put the other driver under pressure, and then opportunities to just save up a little bit of push to pass if you can. Inside of the top 4, John Payne still has 125 seconds, while Roberto Catalano just has 22. Wisloff behind him has 82. So I think we're going to get into these final 3 or 4 laps and really see a difference begin to emerge. And if you've got no push to pass, it's going to be so tough to defend here.
Oh, speaking of trying to defend, you can see John Payne all over the back of Greg Seitz trying to find any way in the book to get past. I think John Payne is maybe feeling a little bit of pressure to get this move done, because as much as Roberto Catalano does not have the advantage on push to pass, I think he's probably burnt up the most out of anybody in the entirety of this field. You've still got Ragnar Wisloff right behind, and David, I think you can speak to this to a greater extent than I can. Ragnar is always a force to be reckoned with in these 60-plus racing adventures events. Doesn't matter what kind of car he's in, he is always going to bring the thunder. So I think at the moment John Payne and Greg Seitz are thinking about maybe getting a move on here in this battle with themselves to figure out who's going to win before those drivers right behind could really pounce.
5 laps to go. Seitz, Payne, Catalano, Wisloff, all within just 1 second as they pick up speed underneath the bridge. So here comes the slipstream. None of these drivers touching the push to pass. So it's all just about that power of the slipstream as they go past 250 kilometers an hour easily and handily in these cars, just needing to manage that throttle. Bergqvist moves ahead of Addy in the next group further back. Wolf Olsen, Steve O'Malley and Mike McCormick coming close in one of the other battles you see on screen, and Russ Addy out into the marbles, but then on a really tight line. Barry Hills can't quite take advantage of it either. Todd Scholl in between wherever you look. We don't know how this one is going to end. John Payne, top of screen, 2/10 behind Seitz. Ragnar Wisloff finally starts claiming his push to pass, and here comes John Payne alongside. He's gone to the inside of Canada corner once. Now he's going to look for the outside at Canada corner, breaking deep around the outside. He just manages to make that work. John Payne leads from Greg Seitz. Roberto Catalano gets closer on virtue of the leaders battling. Ragnar Wisloff close with him as well.
Oh, and that was oh so close. I wasn't sure whether or not that move for the race lead was going to be done successfully heading off their Canada corner. Already talked about this earlier on in the race, how tricky it is to go through there clean. John Payne was able to make it work. Now Greg Seitz may be in a bit of trouble as Catalano and Wisloff were both using the push to pass, hanging down the start-finish straightaway into one. Neither of them close enough to get the move done, but can certainly feel the tension is rising in this battle for the top 4 spots. These drivers are cranking up the heat on the burner. Lap after lap, just cranking it up one notch higher, then another, then another, then another. It's only a matter of time before it boils over, because these racers want to walk away from the first race of the season with a checkered flag. That's pretty much a rule of passage for any racer. You want to get that first W of the season, mainly just for bragging rights stakes.
Sometimes be get the monkey off the back. Roberto Catalano's got just 8 seconds of push to pass left. It's about to run out while the drivers around him have been saving up some numbers for the final lap. Russ Addy has a big problem at turn 5. Kevin Bergqvist has that 5th place. Todd Scholl gets 6th. Pete Thomas, Barry Hills go past him as Russ Addy tries to recover with as minimum damage as he can get. Through the carousel, this top 4 begins to just stretch out a little bit all of a sudden. A replay for Russ Addy. That inside curb, catching a couple of the drivers out, and then as he let off the brakes, almost rolled forward to knock the front wing off.
I gotta say, in this opening race of the season, we haven't seen too much major drama. Of course, we have had a couple of coming togethers, but it's mostly been little single car incidents, not really any drivers just making contact because of an ill-advised move or anything of the sorts. I think it's primarily just been very easy mistakes to happen here at this racetrack. You talked about another one, the exit of turn 5 and how tricky it is to modulate the throttle coming out of the turns, and as you have said on several occasions, the most high-powered cars that we have ever run here in 60-plus racing adventures. Another benefit that the real-life drivers have, because of the repave, this track is a heck of a lot smoother in real life than it is in the sim. This track is about as patchy as my face when I was 14, so these racers really have a test on their hands trying to apply the throttle.
Now, a big lap at Road America has meant not too much lap traffic, but just a tiny bit for our leaders here. Might be Neuvind Anderson getting out of the way there. There's a couple of drivers that have ended up a lap down. This is a challenging car to drive, and there's been some damage, and it's challenging for Roberto Catalano as he runs wide at the top of the hill. Ragnar Wisloff is going to try to get past him. He can see the top 2 getting away. Wisloff looks to the inside. Catalano crowds him just a little bit. Was there a touch on the way in? Wisloff goes up into 3rd.
It was borderline. It's so tricky trying to get a move done there into turn 8. As much as it's a decently heavy braking zone, it's very narrow heading off through there. So I wonder whether or not there was contact. Taking a look at another angle of it this time, a little bit aerial. Yeah, I think there may have been a slight touch there.
There was, it could have been Catalano just crowding him a little bit. You see, that's what Catalano's trying to do. But yeah. Wisloff's still there.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I think you crowded him just a little bit. You gotta leave room when it comes to a 2-car battle. It takes 2 to tango, and that's gonna take the both of them out of it, really. As much as Ragnar Wisloff has more of a chance than Catalano, he's still got a big gap to try and close up, and not a lot of time left in this race. 2 to go here at Road America, maybe one of the biggest tracks of the entirety of this season, but a 3.5-second gap to try and overcome in that little time. I mean, he can turn on the Cuisinarts, kick on the Hyperjets, but I think that incident may have just ruined both of their chances. That's a shame for the both of them, because they showed some good pace throughout this race.
2 laps to go, and plenty in the bank. Both of them are on the button, but the delta has equalized. Now it's John Payne at a little bit of a deficit to Greg Seitz. So Payne's been using a little bit more, but Greg Seitz is still with him. They haven't seen the white flag yet, but they're almost beginning to race like they have. They've seen 3rd, 4th begin to fade away a little bit behind with that contact between Wisloff and Catalano, and it unshackles Greg Seitz to push on just a little bit more here to put John Payne back under pressure, and he will. Payne runs wide with a lockup, side by side going into the carousel. John Payne on this narrow line. Greg Seitz comfortable around the outside, and they touch. Seitz into a slide, but he catches it. It's game on.
Game on indeed. It's getting physical in this battle between these two. They're both on the bun as they head their way through the kink for the second to last time. Payne holds on to that top spot, but Seitz, he's not going to be very happy. Payne's not going to be very happy. These two are going to be throwing haymakers at each other on the last lap of the race. You know how I said at the start of this lap that Ragnar Wisloff really wasn't in contention? He may not be if things remain clean, but if things get ugly between these two, he would be in the catbird seat to take advantage of it and jump into the lead.
About to start a final lap, give or take 4 miles of Road America. John Payne, he's on the push to pass. He's trying to break that slipstream, but it's so powerful in this car as they go past 284, 285 kilometers an hour towards turn 1. That's a big hole in the air. Power of a slipstream squares with the speed. Greg Seitz on board with him now, has 41 seconds of push to pass to burn on this final lap, so immediately he goes to use it. John Payne's got a little bit as well, but it's just going to help him try to defend. Ragnar Wisloff's using his to try to seal up third place. Defensive line from John Payne. Seitz wasn't even that close. John Payne, has he maybe been tricked into defending a little bit too much, and he's lost a little bit of time there.
Yeah, I think John Payne, what he needed to do on this final lap was stake claim on it and try and run at 10/10. He really hasn't been able to do that. Greg Seitz is there. He's within striking distance, and with that gap teetering around that 0.2 of a second barrier, I think he's really going to be under pressure as we get to the end here.
Out of the carousel where these two drivers touched last lap, both of them hit the push to pass button before they're even quite at the apex curb, because they can comfortably run flat out through the kink, but can they? Seitz gets a bit of a wobble. John Payne goes, do I defend the inside or the outside of Canada corner? And in this case, he's looking to just defend that inside line. It's going to be the run out of the final corner that could decide this. Payne with 4 seconds of push to pass. Greg Seitz will keep it mashed all the way to the checkered flag. So with one corner and a straight left to run to open up a new season of 60-plus racing adventures Indy Next. They both hit the push to pass in the run to the checkered flag, but Greg Seitz has got more. John Payne's weaving one side, weaving to the other. Now he's got to hold his line as they're side by side. John Payne holds on by 0.03 of a second.
What a way to bring this season in. That was incredible. I was expecting a drag race, and a drag race we got, but well done to the both of them for keeping it clean on that final lap. I knew it was going to be tense, and it nearly ended separately, but in the exact same point in time through the kink. They were so sideways coming out of there that I am shocked that they both held on to it. But let's take a look at this finish, because that was the stuff of legends. That was awesome.
I think John Payne weaved as much as he could, as much as was fair. By about here, he's run out of push to pass. Greg Seitz is still on that button, an extra 50 horsepower, trying to follow some of the slipstream. Maybe he should have just taken a straight line to the checkered flag, which came up just in time for John Payne. Ragnar Wisloff came across for a podium there. It was another close finish between Bergqvist, Todd Scholl, and Pete Thomas, and other drivers are still coming around to take the checkered flag, like Douglas Beasley and Bruce Poole there, and Randy Shoemake. And last driver on the lead laps look like it might be 20th place, Ulf Olsen. There's your official finishing margin between John Payne and Greg Seitz, 27 thousandths of a second. They were side by side as Barney waved the checkered flag on the first race of this new season. Wisloff managed to work his way from 5th up into 3rd. Roberto Catalano showed us a lot of fight. They burned through that push to pass early, and then had a little bit of contact as well. For 4th, Bergqvist. In 5th, Todd Scholl, Pete Thomas, Barry Hills, Russ Addy, and Franz Josef Sturm, completing our top 10 of an exciting new season. Mike Grandy in 11th, Steve O'Malley, Pierre Bennett, JC Hay, Douglas Beasley, Bruce Poole, Trevor Lawrence, Randy Shoemake, Peter Holstrom, and Ulf Olsen, our top 20 on the lead lap. 9 other drivers, a couple of them with contact, struggling to get to grips with this car, or with damage even. Ivan Anderson, Eugene Clark, Greg Garris, Kahadis Yorison, Tom DeSelms, Mike McCormick, Richard Coulomb, and Roger Jansen a lap down, and David Plowman, I think, might have hit an incident limit and ends up 5 laps down. See if I can find that incident limit. Yeah, it looks like 17x maybe. We can speak to our drivers from that epic duel. And John Payne joins us. Do you have doctor's advice maybe about how high your heart rate's allowed to go? Because that was such a great finish.
Yeah, that was something. I had miscalculated my push to pass, and I had saved the whole race. And for some reason, with like 3 laps to go, I was under the impression that I had enough to go on any and all straightaways. And so I did for like the second to the last lap. But then I saw, no, I don't. So I had to get a little more judicious with it. And I was out coming to the line. He obviously had some, but I bobbed and weaved, and it worked. So yeah, it was a good win.
Yeah, I think you had 4 seconds and he had 15 coming out of the final corner. So I felt from a couple corners back it was going to be side by side, but maybe if he'd just pointed straight for the line with that advantage, it would have worked. But you don't really know what the driver alongside you's got in that situation. You just know what you've got.
Right. And the only reason I was content with riding behind him, because my goal was to wait till 2 laps to go and then give it everything I had. But Ragnar, Roberto, they were coming up, and I was like, well, if I could get them, I don't want them on me, when I'm trying to concentrate on him. So I thought, well, I'll go ahead and pass, and maybe they'll catch him and, make him start watching his mirrors. But it was just what it was. So I feel good to get this one down, and maybe take it a little more easy in the next race. It's good to have a good first race.
Firm cheese, soft cheese, or melted cheese?
Oh, melted. Actually, all cheese is great, but if you're making me pick,
this time of year, I can see that's a good pick as well. So certainly, I think some warm cheese, that's great. And another race to come. You've shown a little bit of your hand. Greg Seitz has shown his. Wisloff and Catalano also. What do you think will be different?
Oh, this track is so. Matter of fact, in qualifying, when Greg qualified on pole and Roberto was up there, I was thinking to myself that I'd prefer to start third, cause so you can see the leader go, and because I knew I needed to get past Roberto as quick as possible. And so I did that, and then it was just try to stay with Greg and not use push to pass, but he kind of pulled away from me when I was not using any push to pass, and so I had to burn a little just to get back up with him. But anybody, as long as you're in that pack and stay in the draft, you're good to go, and you have some push to pass, you're good to go here.
I think Road America is a great track for these cars, because not just with the push to pass, but also the slipstreaming, keeping you guys close together. It was super touch and go who was going to come away with that one. We were on the edge of our seat, presumably you were as well, and we offer you our congratulations on taking the first race win of a new season.
Yeah, I about blew it. That left-hander before the carousel, I just overcooked it. That was on my lap where I was just burning on push to pass on every 8 feet of straight possible, and I just cooked it into there and allowed him to get beside me. We may have touched, but thankfully he didn't spin out, and I'll take it.
John Payne, thank you. Have a great season.
Thanks, guys.
Ron, we've got our whole podium standing by, so we can go to second place Greg Seitz.
Yeah, and let's have a chat with him to kind of get the other side of that. Greg, welcome into the broadcast booth. Before I ask you about that battle for the win towards the end, because it certainly looks stressy from our perspective here in the broadcast booth, how was the race as a whole here at Road America?
It's pretty good. I think it was first race jitters a little bit for me. I couldn't put some consistent laps together. And so I tried to get a little breakaway at the beginning, but all he had to do was use some push a pass and get him back within drafting range. So, yeah, I think it's almost like you're better being in second, maybe. So I might have to change my strategy for the next race.
Yeah, I feel like here at this track, considering the massively long straightaways and the push to pass, of course, being a factor here in these Indy Next cars, I think I would probably prefer to be on offense instead of defense myself. But I want to ask you about that battle at the end, because that looked hair-raising, not only with the sideways snap heading out of the kink, but the chase down to the end. That looked like a pretty fun battle, but certainly nervous at many points in time as well.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably that one incident in the carousel was the scariest for sure. Yeah, I don't know if I chopped his nose or he just drifted wide, but I'm guessing it was pretty much a racing incident. We were side by side through there, which is usually not where you want to be side by side with somebody. So, being on the outside, I got punished for it a little bit, and that kind of, gave me or lost me that rhythm. I think I had a good chance if I could have got through there successfully to hold them off, but yeah, I mean, woulda coulda.
Well, we do have one more opportunity to do well here at Road America. Race number 2 coming up. That's gonna be another tough task, so I want to ask what your thoughts are heading to that race.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be tough just like this one. Like I said, I might change my strategy. I might hang back. It depends on what happens. If I am on pole, I'm not sure I'm going to try to push too hard early on. But it's hard to say until you get in the race and see what things develop. But yeah, I probably change things a little bit for the next race, see if it works out any better.
Well, I will say, I definitely am a little bit biased in this regard. As long as you give us a fantastic battle for race number 2 as well, I will have no qualms what kind of strategy you take into race number 2. But, Greg, well, I'll let you give any thanks or shout-outs before we let you go and get some practice in for the second race.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Yeah, congrats to John and Ragnar. It was a very good race. It was a fun race. Like I said, I'm hoping that next time it'll be the order will be a little bit different. But I also want to thank my team, Rust Racing, and my teammate in this race, Mike McCormick. So, and you guys for putting on the broadcast. Appreciate it.
Well, certainly a treat being here in the commentary booth for race number 1, and looking forward to seeing the action in race number 2. Greg, thank you for joining us, and good luck in the second race.
Yeah, thanks.
And I'll pass it back off to you, David.
Thanks, Ron. I've got Ragnar Vislov, who is on the podium for a new season. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you. That was a bit surprising, but I'll take it. Thank you.
It's a real battle of Northern Europe versus Mediterranean Europe as you battled with Roberto Catalano. He's very quick early, burned through a lot more of his push to pass than you, and I guess you were hoping it'd pay off towards the end for you, and it did.
It did. It did. I was lucky to have draft for a lot of the race, and I think Roberto made a mistake twice in turn 6, and that allowed me to close up and down the hill towards turn 8. I used a push to pass. That's not usually a place you use it, but that was enough to get me alongside, and then I think I was squeezed a bit, so, well, I don't know. I haven't looked at the replay, but I think I couldn't go any further left, so there was no more space to give.
So another season in the Indy Next car. It is bigger, faster, meaner than some of the cars of seasons gone by, but it's still creating some good racing up front where you were, but also all through the field.
I think so. I think this car is quite different. I think we've spoken about this before. It's quite different from the Super Formula Light, which is, I don't know, it has so much downforce coupled with little less power. So it's a different car to drive. This one has a lot of power and the turbo, so you need to nurse it a bit more. And it has the push to pass, and I think that levels the field quite a lot. It's much easier to stay in draft and not allow those big gaps to develop. It was quite surprising. I think up until maybe 2 or 3 laps before the end, there were actually 4 cars, and usually, Greg and John, they just pull away, but we were able to stay with them.
2 incident points. Where'd you get them?
Can't remember. I think probably exit of turn 1. That was one, and I think the other one was exit of Canada. Yeah, this setup is... it was a bit tricky, so it was hard to keep the car under control coming out of those medium speed corners. I don't know if you saw, but I had quite a bit of a wriggle a couple of times.
You and 28 other drivers in race 1 by the seams of things, and what are you going to learn from this into race 2?
Good question. Probably use my push to pass a little bit more evenly through the race. I had way too much left. When it was 2 laps left, I think I had maybe 50 seconds or so. So I'll probably need to, if I have to, use it a bit more evenly.
Very interesting. Best of luck with not only race 2 coming up, but the remainder of the season.
Thank you, David.
Ragnar Wisloff there as we got to speak to our whole podium after race 1 of 60 Plus Racing Adventures from Road America. There's another race still to come. Can't wait for that. Based on what we've seen from race 1, stick with us. David Haynes with Ron Mourns here on RaceSpotTV for 60 Plus Racing Adventures. 60 Plus Racing Adventures is a long-running iRacing league for drivers aged 60 years of age or older. We're in a new season. There's a couple of new drivers, and I always say more people turn 60 every day. Race 1 was an absolute thriller from Road America in the Indy Next cars, and we are back ready to qualify for Race 2. To bring you live coverage on RaceSpotTV, it's David Haynes with Ron Mons, and Hugo Lewis is going to be a busy boy as far as picking the angles, the replays, because we were treated to an absolute feast of action in Race 1, Ron.
Yeah, we had a smorgasbord of action, from drivers overtaking each other and giving us a photo finish worth the ages to get the season up and rolling, to the side-by-side racing that went on all throughout the field. Even outside the top 20, we had drivers scrapping at some points during the race. So really looking forward to seeing what Race 2 has in store. Still the exact same track. These drivers have a bit more experience on their hands, and I think with that is going to come an extra added sense of confidence that will make this race probably even more entertaining than race number 1.
So in this 10-minute qualifying session, drivers get 2 flying laps. Some of them are just starting them now. We're on board with Greg Garris. He's just a little bit of the camber of the curbing there to help him turn in at the 90-degree left-hand at bottom of the hill. And then you carry so much speed through the carousel in a car like this, 4th gear, and then mashing the throttle into 5th on the exit, keeping it pinned through the carousel easy in 6th gear. No push to pass in qualifying. I think it's just the full power all the time.
I believe you are correct, and it makes this car a bit of a handful. We saw it in race number 1 how tricky this track was going to be to master for many of these competitors. Even in qualifying, it is tough because, as we said during race number 1, the broadcast of it, this is a track that tests a driver's skill, a driver's patience, and a driver's bravery, probably more than any of the other tracks we'll be visiting all season long, which is saying something because we have got some stunners of racetracks to look forward to.
Greg Garris crosses the line. Oh, and Douglas Beasley probably won't. No, he won't. That's 2 corners before the end of the lap, and it's come unstuck. Mike McCormick was up top, but then Roberto Catalano takes that. Nick Thomas goes into 3rd. Todd Scholl featured prominently inside of the top 10 in race 1, featured prominently inside of the top 5 in the championship at the end of last season as well. He was actually a mathematical chance till quite late. He also plays with a bit of the track limits and has to catch a lurid slide. We'll see if this time counts, and if it does, if it's especially competitive. 17 drivers with times on the board at the moment. Todd Scholl makes it 18 and slots bang in the middle, just ahead of Ulf Olsen, just behind Barry Hills. Greg Seitz goes to the top as he's 0.05 of a second quicker than Roberto Catalano.
And speaking of Catalano, race number 1 saw him run through the push to pass rather quickly in that. I think he only had 22 seconds left with about half the race left. So I want to see exactly how he's going to manage the push to pass in the race coming up. Certainly looking like another strong performance for him here in qualifying, slotted to join Greg Seitz on the front row. Seitz set in a stormer of a lap time in the qualifying session for race 1, was able to jump in front of the field by a pretty significant margin. Not really seeing that same gap, although it is a gap and it is a provisional pole with about 4.5 minutes left to go. A little bit surprising to see it a bit closer up at the front of the field. I think everybody has found the extra gear that Greg Seitz found in the first race qualifying session.
The second lap times about to come in. Almost everyone is in sort of the back half of their lap, except Mike McCormick. He's off track, so he won't start any better than 3rd by the looks of things. To the timing line comes Roberto Catalano. It's a little bit of an improvement, but Greg Seitz is just behind him on track and goes back up top. We're looking at Ragnar Wisloff as he has a wobble in the final corner. He's trying to improve on a 151.470. He found a couple of improved sectors, 1 purple sector on the lap around so far, and he does just improve by a tiny, tiny bit. He stays 4th behind Seitz, Catalano, and McCormick.
Yeah, so time running out in this qualifying session, we are really getting into crunch time. Everybody needing to set in some good lap times. Russ Addy yet to do that. Walked away with an okay result in race number 1, although I think you'll be looking for a different turn of fortune here in race number 2. Yet to set a time on the board, but enough time for him to get at least 1 lap time in. Let's see if it's enough for him to start a little bit higher up than he did in race number 1. Everybody wants to hit the ground running to get the season up off to a flyer in the first race, obviously, but I feel like race 2 is really the chance to either correct the wrongs that may have gone on during the first race of the night, or maybe just try and improve on what was already a good start to the day.
The driver's first laps didn't count in this qualifying session, so Roger Jansen, Russ Addy for one, and Douglas Beasley. So Addy's hoping that this one will count, and John Payne's only just getting around to finish his first lap. He's leaving us all very, very late, but Russ Addy, this is his one and only shot now.
It's looking pretty quick. 152.2 at P11. Not too bad for us.
Here's Beasley, another driver with no qualifying time just yet. 27 drivers and 25 of them have qualifying times. Now 26. As he jumps up into 14th place. John Payne's first lap has put him to 12th, and now it doesn't look like he's improving on his second. A race 1 winner, I think, has thrown away his second qualifying lap in turn 3 or turn 5.
And if he has, if your race 1 winner is going to start this second race all the way down in 12th, it's going to be a big sigh of relief in the cockpit of the 774 car of Greg Seitz. Meanwhile, John Payne, yeah, he's in the pits. Our race 1 winner going to be starting no better than 12th. That's going to be a good storyline to keep our eyes on into the second race of the day.
So the first lap was about what we would expect, but then somewhere on the second lap he's had a bad sector, and then he's pulled aside, and that means he's done, and it means qualifying is done for every single driver with 27 on track, 26 setting lap times, and 40 seconds still to go in this qualifying session. Greg Seitz gets pole. Roberto Catalano will start from second, Mike McCormick in third, Ragnar Wisloff in fourth. Pete Thomas gets fifth in qualifying with Greg Garris in sixth. Bergquist in seventh, Barry Hills in eighth, Todd Scholl in ninth, Gerhardus Joris in 10th. Quite a bit of teammates inside of the top 10. Scholl and Garris, Hills and Jorison, Greg Seitz and Mike McCormick. Russ Addy will start from 11th. There's John Payne back in 12th position. Mike Randy in 13th. Douglas Beasley in 14th. Franz Josef Sturm and Ulf Olsen 15th and 16th. Pierre Bennett starting from 17th and Tom DeSelms in 18th. Oyvind Anderson has qualified 19th and Bruce Poole in 20th. Peter Holstrom in 21st. JC Hay in 22nd, Richard Coulomb in 23rd, Jerry Kerr in 24th. Two more drivers of qualifying times are Randy Shoemake and Eugene Clark. Roger Jansen went out on track in qualifying, completed 2 laps, and unfortunately neither of them counted. He can start from 27th.
I think that's a rather easy occurrence to pick up here at Road America. We saw in race 1 how quickly the incident points were racked up for some, picking up black flags and disqualifications as a result of all that. I'm going to ask you this here real quick, David, before the field deploys on this quick little formation lap. Do you think the incident points are once again going to play a factor in this second race, or do you think the drivers have used race 1 as an opportunity to kind of learn the ropes here, and they'll probably be able to get off to a smoother run here in the second race?
Probably not so much inside of the top 10, but other places in the fields. I certainly could see it. The highest running driver that got DQ'd out of race 1 was Mike McCormick. Well, now he starts third in this race, so maybe I need to wind back what I just said a little bit. We're about to get going on the formation lap. some of these drivers might get used to looking at the back of a Porsche 911 GT3 Touring. Seitz and Catalano is the front row. McCormick and Wistloff on the next. Pete Thomas and Greg Garris. This race is a golden opportunity for Greg Seitz, as he was bested in race 1. Now he starts from race 2 on the pole.
Yeah, I think this is really going to be a golden opportunity for him after a fantastic run in the first race, and really stood out as a standout star throughout that. We'll have to see how things can go in this second race. It may be the same track, it may be the same batch of drivers in the exact same cars, but I feel like this is going to be a completely different test for these racers. So as they head their way out of the final turn, let's get up and rolling for the second time today.
Greg Seitz has shown a little bit of his hand in the first race, perhaps, and he goes now. Similarly, the inside row is the one to be in. Mike McCormick goes with him, and there were 3 wide behind that. Catalano, Wistloff, and Pete Thomas to the inside on the 3 wide. It's cold tyres for everyone. Pete Thomas is the first to blink, perhaps wisely. Wistloff wide in the marbles, in the grass, and out through the gravel.
And that's going to be a careful rejoin there. He's going to have to drop the anchors big time. He drops down, I think, down to 4th to last. Shows you how quickly things can change in the blink of an eye here. Looking at side-by-side battling as they head their way on the back straightaway down into turn number 5 here. Nearly saw some drivers coming to blows.
A couple of drivers have had a good start. One there, Gahadis Yorison making up some positions as he bombed down the inside of turn 5, outbraking himself just a little bit. Now we've got a squeeze at the top of the hill between Scholl and John Payne. John Payne moving up 3 spots already. Russ Addy up 3 spots already. Bergquist up the 2. Wistloff is down 20 from being on the outside of that 3 wide going into turn 1. We go on board with Franz Josef Sturm exiting the carousel. Push to pass not yet active on lap 1, but the slipstream certainly is behind Douglas Beasley, who's very cautious on his cold tyres through the kink, but then shuts the door in Sturm's face.
Yeah, that's not going to be too well received there. That could have ended in disaster if he tried to force that issue a little bit. So Franz Josef Sturm playing the diplomat there as we see the moment for Wistloff heading off into turn number 1 on the outside of that 3 wide situation. I had a feeling that that was going to work out poorly. You can see it was already off into the dirt, getting some dirt on those left-hand side tires. And really, as soon as that happened, you just can't go through turn 1 here with dirt on the tires, cold tires, trying to head your way off into that heavy braking zone and get away with it. So unfortunately for Ragnar Wistloff, his race, I mean, it's still not over. He's out there on the racetrack still, but in terms of contending for a race win,
because of this, Drama's penultimate corner, backwards for some damage, so he's behind. He's climbing up over Clark or Janssen there.
I spoke too soon.
Push to pass is active, and so are some of our drivers in using it, but not your top 2. Seitz and McCormick have held back for the moment. Roberto Catalano, it will shock everyone who watched race 1 to know, has already used up a little bit of his. Behind there, Barry Hill's kicking up some grass. He's ahead of Russ Addy at the moment, but Addy and Payne have been the big movers of the race so far. They're beginning to put some pressure on him. There's pressure on Catalano again from Pete Thomas this time.
Yeah, and Catalano once again being a bit heavy-handed on the push to pass, holding the bun down through the kink, heading down to Canada corner right now. He's desperately trying to hold on to P3 and hold on to the back of the 2 drivers right in front of him in the same car, Seitz and McCormick, holding on to those top 2 spots right now. Catalano desperately trying to hang on to a podium, hang on to P3, and make sure that Pete Thomas doesn't overtake him. This time, however, Catalano may have a different test on his hands, because unlike the deal at the start of race number 1, where the top 4 kind of broke away into their own little pack, that's not really the case here at the moment. If Catalano starts getting overtaken by the likes of Pete Thomas, he could very well easily fall into the crutches of the likes of Kevin Bergquist, Greg Garris, I should say, my apologies. That could very easily go.
Roberto Catalano's up into second. Mike McCormick has been wide through turn 1. Pete Thomas is also going to go past, and we're right on board with Kevin Bergquist. You saw, drove through a little bit of the gravel that I think McCormick has brought. So McCormick really on the back foot, a couple of spots down. Bergquist is going to look to the inside at turn 5 if that opens up, but it doesn't. Go down the hill. Everyone's very careful with the brake pedal. Greg Garris just behind them there. The Barry Hill still ahead of Addy and Payne. This is an issue for Pierre Bennett at his own corner.
Another driver running into difficulties, heading off through Canada corner. Jared Kerr had a moment off through the final turn himself. You know, I was saying it in reference to Roberto Catalano, but I think it fits more so with Mike McCormick after that moment through turn number 1. He nearly got overtaken by Kevin Bergquist. I think he's still not out of the woods just yet, as Bergquist hits the button a little bit out of the carousel. Very easy to have your race go from running all right to running really bad in the blink of an eye. I believe it was Pete Thomas in race 1 that kind of had something similar happen to him. It was all through the likes of turn 5 and 6, where he ended up running wide off the track, and just things snowballed from there, dropping down the running order like an anvil push out of a helicopter. You got to keep your eye on that in these big packs like this.
I bet it feels really good to push an anvil off something high. On board with John Payne, he did not get the qualifying he wanted. He started in 12th. He's up into 9th right now, with Russ Addy ahead of him. Barry Hill's ahead of that, but Payne has not used any of his push to pass yet. He's trying to save it. He's staying with the pack. He's seeing this battle in front as Addy gets past Hills into 1. John Payne thinks maybe I'll get by into turn 3. Doesn't open up for him how he'd like, but he's just trying to focus on the exits by the looks of things.
I think there may have been some drama going on a little bit farther in the back. Yes, there has. It's Jorson. Oh, huge hit into the inside wall coming out of turn number 1. Very similar situation to what we saw go down in race 1 on several occasions. Clip the grass and just auger straight into that inside barrier. We have a lot of treacherous spots around this racetrack. I feel like turn 1, though, if it goes wrong there, it's going to go disastrous. There's no other way around it.
Speed means big accidents happen quickly. John Payne's the only driver inside of the top 10 that hasn't used any push to pass yet, so clearly this is the strategy he's cooked up for this race, is don't use it and then use a lot of it right at the end. Hopefully he's calculated a little better than he did in race number 1. Roberto Catalano is on the opposite and opposing strategy as he battles for the podium positions, but how close is this still inside of the top 10? It's just a train everywhere you look of battling cars. As they came underneath the Sargento Cheese Bridge, we saw it. We see it again on this straight towards Canada Corner. We'll see it again on the front straight momentarily.
Now, I will say, just briefly breaking away from the action, we have got some awesome turn names around this racetrack. The Marine Sweep,
no, Barry
Hurry
Hills.
Downs.
The final corner has bit him. I think he's pushed a little bit wide into the grass, spun to the inside wall as we've seen others done, and he's driving to pit lane with a whole heap of damage on the front of the car. So he was trying to fend off John Payne. Oh, yeah, that's on throttle.
Yeah, curb playing a factor in that as well. I believe this track does have 3D curbs, which start off as a bit of a rarity on iRacing, but it has slowly but surely infected all the racetracks, and very similar to the season finale last season, which I believe was at Sebring. That track was one of the first to have 3D curbs a matter of nearly 2 full years ago at this point. This track, however, as soon as you hit those curbs, get a little bit of undulation and that rear axle, you can very easily drop it. Gotta worry about that. You gotta basically treat that throttle pedal as if there's a raw egg underneath it. Try not to crack that egg.
Well, the drivers of 60 Plus Racing Adventures in this new season are absolutely spoiled because there is a battle through the field for everyone. Race lead, this group with Mike McCormick, Olsen versus Beasley, Poole versus Holstrom, JC Hay versus Roger Janssen versus Eugene Clark. Janssen had no qualifying time, remember, but he's now up 7 spots into 20th, so he's racing far better than he qualified. David Anderson battling against Jerry Kerr, and if Ragnar Wisloff can have his way, he'll begin to come back through the field at some point in this race. On board with Payne, who started 12th, runs 8th right now, has still not gotten into any of his push to pass. He's letting everyone else burn it up, battling in the early goings, and then he's going to try to swoop through at the end. What he doesn't want, therefore, is too much field spread.
Yeah, and as much as I think it is a good idea to run the strategy that he is putting the fate into somebody else's hand in the midst of this battle here with Russ Addy and Greg Garris. It will allow John Payne to have a slight bridge between himself and the drivers inside of the top 5. I like that call, though, to save up on the push to pass, use it for the end. He knew what the pressure was like dealing with the lack of push to pass. Coming time for the end of the race, having to burn it up on that last lap to desperately cling on to the race lead. I think as much as Greg Seitz was the one talking about a change of strategy and a change of path here in race 2, I think it's really applied to John Payne.
Surprisingly, only 5 seconds away from the race lead as well. Everyone's kind of got to grips with this car a little bit. The slipstream has a little bit of strength to it, not quite MX-5s at Daytona, but visually it's looking like it's worth almost a second per lap here. They seem to close, 3/10 or maybe a tiny bit more on the front straight. And then here, exiting the carousel, it's pretty strong as well. You add that up around this big lap with lots of fast straights, and I could see it adding up to a decent number. Russ Addy is up 5 spots in this race. He got past Greg Garris not that long ago. John Payne might want to be next. They're trying to stay with Kevin Bergquist, who's just in behind Mike McCormick, as the top 3 begin to just stretch away a little bit. Pete Thomas currently looking at a podium spot. Roberto Catalano using all his push to pass to try to stay within 1 second of Greg Seitz. And this is a good race so far from Seitz, though.
Yeah, and an improvement as well for Catalano, slotted in second. As much as he was a bit heavy-handed on the push to pass, ever since he broke through and got a couple more spots, it looks like he's feeling probably more calm now than he has been throughout the entirety of the day thus far. Certainly calmness here in race number 2, and a lot calmer than race 1, where he was feeling pressure from the drop of the green through to the fall of the checkered. He's running smooth at the moment in second, with about a second between the car in front and the car behind. He must be feeling good about his chances. Meanwhile, McCormick and Bergquist, they may very well start to squabble up here soon. We saw that moment from McCormick not too long ago, heading off through turn number 1, and we haven't really seen the same pace out of that number 99 car since. He's a bit stagnant right now, plateaued at P4. Let's see if he can make that jump in front of Thomas and jump his way back up into the podium and catch up to his teammate of Seitz, or whether or not Bergquist may try to apply the pressure first.
I wonder if McCormick's trying to be a little bit more careful with his track limits. John Payne goes down the inside of Greg Garris and is now up into 7th place.
Oh, McCormick with a huge snap through the carousel. Sorry to budge in there. He just had it all sorts of crossed up, and Bergquist gonna get through to 4th.
Russ Addy closes in behind as well. So yeah, McCormick struggling with the balance then, it seems. Losing a spot. Addy thought around the outside of Canada corner, and that did not work in the slightest. Now he's more on the defensive to John Payne, who's up into 7th spot. Thomas is doing quite well for himself in 3rd. Everyone's lighting up the push to pass out of the final corner. Surely stronger effect out of the slow corners. And turn 5, one of the only places I'm really seeing them get into 2nd gear. But when you've got a long straight in front of you, the idea of opening up the push to pass becomes very enticing. The thoughts that enter your mind when you've got an open road ahead of you.
And everybody enjoying the open road, and certainly Greg Seitz enjoying an open road with no race cars in front. Everybody behind him, though, it is a train of cars. The top 8 covered by 6 seconds, with one main breakaway coming from your top 3 after that moment and squabble with McCormick, and the battling with himself and Bergquist has broken up. The top 3 now driving off into the sunset somewhat. It's only about 2 seconds between P3 and 4, so we can't necessarily say that it is broken away fully. However, these drivers are still packed in like sardines, everybody trying to gain a spot. Keep an eye on John Payne, we mentioned him, and the somewhat disappointing run that he had in qualifying, now running up in 7th and has a darn good shot to break his way not only up into the top 5, maybe up to the 4th, and who knows, maybe he could be glue that brings the top 3 back to the rest of the field and sticks this field back together once again. Let's see if John Payne can do that off the back of that race win in race 1.
He uses the push to pass through the kink, closing up on Russ Addy so quickly. He's going to get to the inside for Canada corner here. That's that saved up push to pass that John Payne's got. When he senses an opportunity, he can lean on the button. How filthy is the racetrack at Canada? Let's get a street sweeper going there. Maybe a snowblower would do the trick.
Just bring out the world's largest shop vac or a Hoover, whatever you need. There is gravel and grass and tire marbles all around the outside of this racetrack. We talked about the carousel maybe being a source of contention, but it seems like Canada corner just as much so.
Cormick loses another spot. John Payne goes ahead of him to slot in behind Kevin Bergquist. We go on board with Russ Addy. Cormick on the defensive, so he crosses him up through turn 3. Everyone hits the push to pass. They're all been banking from early, using it up now. It equalizes just a little bit, but John Payne, of course, is the one with the most to spend. Catalano's got 38 left. Pit braking zone there. Addy does get down to second gear, and I think it's the traction out of the second gear corners where they've got to be really careful with the throttle. There's a few third gear corners, fourth gear corners where you sort of carry a little more throttle through and then can mash it a little bit more, but out of the second gear corner, I think you've got to mentally focus on opening the steering wheel before you open the throttle.
And also be aware of the curbs. We've seen a lot of drivers loop it after, either directly after hitting a curb, or they just loop it stopping on the gas on a curb. We saw that happen a little bit earlier on in this race, heading out of the final turn. Very easy to get a little bit squirrely when you run over the curbs trying to apply the power. Even on the inside, when we were riding on board with Russ Addy, you could see him go a little bit to the south of that inside curb, and it didn't really work out too well for him. Hopped the car a little bit, unsettles it slightly. In the meantime, though, John Payne just jumped his way up into 4th.
Has still 5.5 seconds behind the race lead with 6 laps to go, but with a fair chunk of push to pass to go for John Payne. He wants to see a battle between 1st, 2nd and 3rd. We're going to see a battle between McCormick and Russ Addy down towards turn 1 here. McCormick trying to go middle of the road. Russ Addy sitting in the slipstream as long as he can before he slides down the inside, slides a little bit wide, but moves up into 6th place. Greg Garris goes wide in the dirty air behind, kicking up some of that grass on the outside of turn 1.
I wonder how the mental state of McCormick is after running in 2nd a little bit earlier on in this race. Things have snowballed out of control and not in his favor. As I gotta be looking for him as we get to the very end. There's still one more car left behind him. It's Greg Garris in the number 10. After that, is he gonna get overtaken once more? Garris running a little bit wide off through turn number 6, so the pressure getting taken off McCormick's shoulders ever so slightly off through the middle sector right now. But I still think that Mike McCormick is trying to get a grips with this racetrack. This is one where, as we've said, it tests your patience and it tests your skill. You need to be comfortable running around here, and if you get thrown off your groove a little bit, if you're off your A game slightly, this track will pounce the opportunity to throw you into the nearest wall.
Through the kink at intense speed in these open wheeler cars. They've got so much grip. They are so fast through there compared to stock cars, GT cars, anything with a little bit more weight to it, and a little bit of downforce at those medium to high speeds as well. Bruce Poole, 6th gear, flat out, no sweat at all. Jerry Kerr's got a little bit of sweat. He's just written off his car, not sure where, not sure how, but he's going to join the list of retirements along with Oyvind Anderson, Barry Hills, and Gerhardus Jorgensen. On board with Bruce Poole, who hasn't touched his push to pass. Ulf Olsen up the road has. And our first driver to run out, I think, has been Sweden's Roger Janssen. That's the final corner, and a mistake we've seen many do before. Poole in the deep end.
Yeah, unfortunately for him, finding the tire bundles, which, I mean, they're not soft and cuddly like a teddy bear in real life, but in the sim, they're basically made out of the matter of a white dwarf star. As Janssen get a move done there, I believe that's is that Shoemaker? Is that a battle for position? I was going to say, it looked like that was a lap car. It was such a big pace differential, but no, this is a battle for position there. Janssen getting an incredible run, heading out of that final turn. We've seen a lot of racers run into trouble through there, either running wide or just spinning on the exit. If they were very lucky that Janssen didn't join that club immediately after that last car didn't.
Janssen's push to pass account is overdrawn right now, and they've cancelled his line of credit as well. So despite a great exit versus Randy Shoemaker used the push to pass. Janssen couldn't do anything. Eugene Clark and Pierre Bennett behind have got someone there, going to battle. So this is a 4-way fight. Bennett, big dive, looking 2 for 1. And Janssen can't do anything about it.
Yeah, Janssen is pretty much chopped liver at the current moment. Everybody is putting a move on him. There's not really too much that he can do. As much as these cars, you can really run them at 10 tenths. That push-to-pass has such a strong advantage that with him having none, he's pretty much in the passenger seat in the single-seater that he's behind the wheel of. So not too much that he can control at the present moment, and there's no more hopeless feeling behind the wheel of a car than having that.
Guessing he's not going to be of a Swede disposition right now.
You know, I'd say probably not.
Clark trying to put him under some pressure, not able to do so. The thing that is going to come back to save Janssen maybe is some of the other drivers around him running out of push to pass or just plain not using it, like Pierre Bennett. Greg Seitz has crossed the start-finish line with a 1.2 second lead with 4 laps to go. And then Roberto Catalano, Pete Thomas, who's saved up some push to pass to use, and John Payne, who's closing in on the lead. It's closing in all of these battles. Shoemaker versus Bennett, Janssen versus Clark. Towards turn 1, Bennett goes around the outside, and Shoemaker checks up, so Eugene Clark tries to follow through as well.
Yeah, the side-by-side battling still got to continue off through turn number 3. That looked really quick, but Eugene Clark keeps it on the road and jumps his way up a spot. Well done to him as the battling now going to go on, but I don't think it'll be too much of a battle. Janssen still with no push to pass. Probably got to be a sitting duck heading down the straightaways, or actually, no. Just got that moved. I think Randy Shoemaker had such a slow run being stuck on the inside with the shallow line through turn number 3 that Janssen, even with a lack of push to pass, was able to get the move done. So props for props and most certainly do with that. But the battling is really getting intense out there on the racetrack, and one that I think could intensify between now and the end if any sort of drama were to break out involving your podium runners. John Payne has broken away from that train involving Kevin Bergquist and is slowly but surely reeling in your top 3. The gap to himself and Pete Thomas has gone down to about a second and a half currently. I wonder if Payne can maybe close that up even more and give us a battle for that final podium spot.
Could be another last lap thriller. We're on board with Greg Garris as Mike McCormick has a look at Russ Addy ahead, loses a little bit of momentum through turn 1. Greg Garris has got his teammate Todd Scholl ranging up behind as well in this particular 4-way fight. Everyone running wide out of turn 3. Mind those track limits, mind getting the dirt on your tyres. Addy, McCormick, Garris and Scholl. You going to ask for any team orders here? I don't think there are any, as Scholl dives down the inside of Garris, who then defends it around the outside with a better exit, and they cost each other just a tiny bit of time.
See, I feel like it being the season opener, you can't really apply team orders in the opening race. I mean, granted, you don't want your drivers to crash into each other, but everybody wants to win the opening round of the championship, either race 1 or 2. So I think applying team orders at this point in time would not really be a good idea. It's basically like applying a small little SpongeBob branded Band-Aid on somebody who just got their head cut off.
This is Pierre Bennett and Eugene Clark. It's a battle for custody of Road America, perhaps. Deeply patriotic Eugene Clark livery, but Pierre Bennett, the Canadian, well, he's got his own corner. A bit further around the track. Clark is up 9 spots in this race, tying him for biggest mover with Roger Jansen. So Clark, the last driver with a qualifying time, Roger Jansen without one. Richard Coulomb picks up that 17 incident point DQ. I wonder if a few other drivers with 2 laps to go might be a little bit close to that. This is the 4-way fight, Addy, McCormick, Garrison, Scholl. I think you'll get a 3-way fight, Catalano, Pete Thomas and John Payne in about a lap's time as well. It's 2 to go at Road America.
And seeing all this battling go on out there on the racetrack, teammates squabbling up, drivers just trying to get in front of each other to end off this first round of the championship on the best note imaginable. Brought up a good point talking about Canadian and American battling, despite the fact this is Road America. It does have Canada corner, and the Canadians have done well here in the past. The likes of Paul Tracy, Jacques Villeneuve, yes, that Jacques Villeneuve, who went on to win the F1 World Championship just a matter of 2 years after he grabbed back-to-back wins here in 1994 and 1995, and Alex Tagliani, in fact, was able to grab his first and only ever IndyCar win here back in 2004. Granted, it was Champ Car at that point in time. It still marks as American open wheel racing, so we'll get the specifics out of the way there. But no, this track really is a happy hunting ground for all different nationalities. It is a happy hunting ground for racers all around. This is a true racers track, and everybody trying to give us a good battle all throughout the field.
See Hay ahead of Tom DeSelms in 14th and 15th. So Hay picking up just a couple of spots, but that's around. Oh no, for Eugene Clark. And it's going to be tough to right that ship, actually, as the rest of the field comes past. Waiting, and then firing it up in first gear. Not the wheel spin and donut I would have done, but old drivers and bold drivers, but rarely both. Starting the final lap of the race, Greg Seitz has a 2.5 second lead on Roberto Catalano and Pete Thomas. John Payne hasn't been able to catch them as much as I would have thought. Kevin Berquist is clear of this battle as Russ Addy, Mike McCormick, Greg Garris and Todd Scholl have one more lap to sort it out. Todd Scholl has the most push to pass and he sits 4th in this group. Interesting.
Very interesting, and I think it is very much so advantage Scholl. They're all on the bun. The 2 teammates are at the very least. Garris getting off of it. Scholl can lean on it. Let's see if he's going to try and go for a 2-for-1 deal. Trying to go for the move on Garris, running off into the grass in the process. Will he try and go for the dive on McCormick? It's close, but he's not going to go for it. Lock up farther up the road, though. I think Scholl is going to be a force to be reckoned with in this fight to the checker.
Yeah, he used plenty there to get by his teammate Garris, so McCormick still has a little bit to use. Roberto Catalano is out, and Pete Thomas, I think, is going to challenge him on this final lap. Pete Thomas with 9 seconds of push to pass, Catalano with none. You'd think he'd be able to get the job done here, as Thomas uses just a tiny bit. Then he'll have the slipstream, and he'll have some for the final run up the hill to the checkered flag as well. Roberto Catalano needs to be careful. What side of the road does he go? He doesn't really open up a lane for Pete Thomas, and that was to Catalano's detriment as he battled with Ragnar Wisloff in the first race as well. Seitz has 6 in the bag, and he's up the road. John Payne will close in on this fight as they checked each other up a little bit through Canada corner. So more battles on the final lap to the checkered flag. Greg Seitz, Roberto Catalano, Pete Thomas under some pressure here, just uses his last push to pass to try to defend versus John Payne. Greg Seitz takes a race win from Catalano, from Thomas, from Payne, Berquist. And then Addy and McCormick are drag racing up the hill as well. McCormick and Scholl and Garris couldn't take any.
Yeah, I think Scholl and Garris may have had their own little photo finish right there for P8 and 9. I think Scholl got the advantage of the driver, the number 10 there. Looking at a battling going on here as well. JC Hay and Tom DeSelms, they're going to be duking it out. This is a battle for 14th and 15th right at the end of this race, running in a pack all by their lonesome with Hallstrom, I would say about 9 seconds farther up the road. Not 9 seconds, 6 seconds farther up the road. Drivers behind Pierre Benet about 5 seconds back. So these two can only focus on themselves, but JC Hay use a push to pass heading out of the final turn. It looks like it is going to be advantage Hay as they head their way across the line. That'll be P14 for the driver, the number 89 car here at the end of this race, at the end of this round here at Road America. A round to kick this season off that did not disappoint. That was awesome.
Looking like Roger Jansen will get most positions gained, plus 10. He picked off Randy Shoemake. Richard Coulomb got the DQ, and then a couple of other spots came the way of Jansen right at the end of this race. Shoemake, Clark, Wisloff eventually coming home to 20th. Greg Seitz takes the race win and the fastest lap of the race. Roberto Catalano on the podium in the new season for the first time. Pete Thomas likewise joining him from third place. John Payne fought valiantly from 12th up to 4th, but couldn't reach the high water mark of his race 1 win. Kevin Bergquist, Russ Addy, Mike McCormick, Todd Scholl, Greg Garris, and Mike Grandy complete the top 10. Seitz was the only driver to take the checkered flag with any push to pass left. Everyone was eager to use it in race 2. Franz Josef Sturm finished 11th, Ulf Olsen finished 12th, Peter Hallstrom in 13th, JC Hay, Tom DeSelms, Pierre Bennett, Roger Jansen, Randy Shoemake, Eugene Clark, and Ragnar Wisloff with his lap 1 excursion and his damage repairs could only come back to 20th place. Douglas Beasley and Bruce Poole were the last drivers on the lead lap as we get 2 more than race 1 delivered. Jerry Kerr 1 lap down. Richard Coulomb running out of incident points with 2 laps to go. Oyvind Anderson, Barry Hills, and Johannes Jorrison finding big damage and retirements. The podium will come to us. First up, be race winner Greg Seitz. That was a little bit more textbook, a little bit more playbook. The pole, the fastest lap, the win.
Yeah, that time everything went as planned, but then John wasn't there. Roberto definitely kept me honest and put on some good pressure, but I had some reserve in my push to pass, so I kind of saved it to near the end and wanted to get the fastest lap, which I did, I think.
Yep, you picked that off. A 1:50.46 the only driver to set a lap time in the 150s. McCormick, your teammate, qualified very well. Are you going to think already about the team's championship?
Yeah, no, I'm really happy with how he did. I don't know where he ended up, but I'm happy with his qualifying, and he got off to a good start and kind of helped create a little bit of a gap there. So, yeah, he did a great job.
A few drivers in both races falling afoul of a 17x incident DQ. Now, presumably you've got it all a little bit more under control, but where do you think they were struggling with that?
There's a lot of you just go barely onto the dirt, like coming out of turn 1, for instance. You know, if you just tiny bit touch the dirt. Similar thing with, I think, turn 5 or 6. It's pretty strict on the track limits, and again, like in turn 7, so there's plenty of places to get 1Xs, so you kind of have to be a little more conservative to avoid those.
And you were the only driver in the top 10 to finish with any push to pass left. No desire to just burn that last 6 seconds somewhere, saving it for some donuts?
No, just in case anything happened. I wanted to have a tiny bit in reserve to be able to fight back, if I screwed up somewhere and then Roberto, had a chance to kind of come back at me. I wanted to have a little bit left over just in case. Better to have a little bit more than not enough.
Yeah, that's a great strategy when you've got a lead. You want to make sure you don't fumble the good thing, and you didn't.
Exactly.
You take a win. Congrats.
Yep. Thank you.
Now, Ron, how's your Italian?
I don't even want to tempt fate with even trying a little bit of Italian, but I think we'll still have a chat with Roberto Catalano, and I will try to avoid any Italian pronunciation because I don't want to embarrass myself. Roberto, welcome into the broadcast booth, man. Pretty darn good race for you here in race number 2. How was it out there?
Thank you. I was lucky that John did a bad qualify, and I drive second place. But Greg is too fast for me, and Pete can overtake me.
It was a pretty pretty tame day, a pretty tame race here, at least for race number 2. Want to ask you what's like driving this car around this track, because at many points in time it looked like a handful for pretty much everybody up and down the field.
Yes, it's a fantastic track. I think Road America is a fantastic track, and with this car, it's very good. I think that Slipstream can help to stay with the leader, but Greg and John have another pass from me, and also Pete, and in the first race Ragnar are very fast. I am happy with my second place.
I can imagine you are quite pleased about the way this went for you in the opening round of this championship. Now, next time out for y'all here in 60 Plus Racing Adventures, you're going to be running at Okayama in just 1 week's time. What are your thoughts heading to that track next time out?
Yes, Okayama is a very good track. I love it, and I think that we can enjoy. The field is very good. There are very fast drivers from all over the world, and this league is fantastic. It's enjoyable, fantastic, great sportsmanship from everyone. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I know every time I'm in the broadcast booth here for these races, it's always a treat to see how y'all race out there. Always put on a good show, and looking forward to the next time we'll be able to cover these Indy Next cars in a couple of weeks' time. But Roberto, thank you for joining us here in the broadcast booth. Well done on the results, and looking forward to seeing you out there on the racetrack once again.
Thank you.
And that right there was Roberto Catalano.
Yeah, some fresh faces on the podium in race 2 compared to race 1 means there's going to be a whole heap of drivers in the hunt for the title in this new season of 60 Plus Racing Adventures Indy Next. We'll join them in the new year for more racing here on RaceSpotTV. Make sure you're following us, and thank you so much if you've been along for the ride today at Road America. What thrilling racing. Greg Seitz and John Payne coming away with the wins at Road America might tussle for the championship once again. I've been David Haynes with Ron Morns, Hugo Lewis in the production for us. What a thrill it's been. We'll see you next time.